Hello, and welcome to another episode of In Bed with Books. I'm your host, Melissa, and today we are joined by author Lauren Kate. Lauren, would you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Hi, I'm Lauren Kate. I am the author of 15 novels. My latest book is called White Lights, which we're here today to talk about. I write all different kinds of books, and I've written for all different ages. I started out writing young adult novels. I have a middle grade novel. I have adult contemporary novels, historical fiction, fantasy, paranormal, and what I'm doing right now is adult romantasy that is a paranormal angel trilogy. So I'm really excited to get to talk about it.
Nice, nice. I will add the little kind of warning at the beginning. I was a fan of the Fallen series. That was kind of peak my getting into paranormal or fantasy romance, whatever. Do you prefer paranormal versus, I know now the term is more romantasy?
Either one, I like them both. I like them all. I mean, what to me is appealing about the paranormal aspect is like it's what all of us kind of want. Like we are living in the real world and we do want an angel to land in our backyard and like swoop us off our feet. So I like that there's a real world element and a real world tether to the paranormal. But I mean, very quickly we get into the realm of fantasy. So I think it
Yeah,
all evens out in the wash.
that's fair. That's fair. Um, So you have the much nicer cover without the like ARC sticker on there. So, but here's my yes, yeah. This
Nice.
is a journey back into that original world. So I want to ask, what was the like impetus for that? Why was it just you felt it was time? Like what led to that decision?
Um, yeah, in some ways it was less a decision and more of an impulse, I guess. I dream a lot related to the stories that I want to tell. And I woke up one morning a couple of years ago with this question in my mind, which was, what happens when heaven is running out of angels? Um, and a lot of my fascination with angelology originates with a single Bible verse that's in Genesis. That sure I knew as a child, but like I um, really got fascinated by it when I was in graduate school for creative writing, and I took a class with a divinity scholar. The line in Genesis is really simple, and it's 6, 1 through 4, and all it says is there was an age when the sons of God, so these are the angels up in heaven, looked down from heaven and saw the daughters of man. The daughters of man are us, mortal women. And they found that they were beautiful. That's all the verse says, but my professor at the time looked to the language that came right after it, which is about a period of war and upheaval and violence. And she suggested that a lot of scholars think that moment when the angels placed something before God, they're supposed to just sing glory to God all the time. That's what the angels sing adoration songs to God. But for a moment, they were tempted by mortal women and they adored something outside of God. And God got jealous and God cast them out of heaven. And so this is in the sort of extra textual biblical lore, that idea that an angel might give up their place in heaven for love felt so interesting to me. And so the world of fallen is born out of the idea of like, who is that mortal woman who makes it worth it to sacrifice your Aeveternity for love? Um, and the world of white lights begins with a really similar question, and it's what happens when more than one very important angel quits heaven for love or something like it, the hope of love, the pursuit of love. Um, what happens to heaven? What happens to the cosmos? What becomes of all of us who don't realize how much we rely on the work of angels? and what can be done to mend a heaven that's kind of falling apart at the seams.
I like that. And you know, the original series, it feels like that is such a like a world changing thing when Luce and Daniel like choose each other. I mean, I guess that's the spoiler warning on this is that I will be doing spoilers for the original series because
Go for
it's been out for quite a while now.
it.
As somebody who read it as a teenager and is very much not a
Yeah.
teenager anymore. Um, but yeah, it was like I can see that as, of course, the what risks do we take for love is kind of the question of that
Yeah.
original series. And this White Light starts kind of with a similar question when is it Rafe?
Rafe,
Rafe,
yes.
thank you. Rafe meets with Sam and he's like, I'm done. And then just starts hitting on a waitress. And it is such like a this is actually 10 years narratively like
Yeah.
after that event. And what does that look like now? And now they know they have a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, really like that.
Exactly. There's something revolutionary about the choice that Luce and Daniel made in Fallen, that these angels made in heaven in Genesis. And I don't think it would stop there. I think
Mhm.
it's a kind of, epidemic.
Yeah, and not to get too soapboxy about it, but like it's a lot easier to light that kind of fire when you're like showing it in
Mm,
terms like in book. Like Luce and Daniel might not in that moment, in that epilogue, that finale of the whole thing, realize kind of how revolutionary what they did was. But then you've got the former angel of death hitting on a waitress and hooking up with librarians because he wants to feel something more than
yeah.
just his job, I guess. Yeah, I love that that connection there. So I do want to kind of talk about the birth of this universe though as well. Um, what started it? What was the kernel or the acorn that began this?
Yeah, so it really did start with this me. I had moved to rural Northern California to get my master's degree in fiction. I was writing another novel that never saw the light of day. Um, that was my thesis project. I was finishing, it was the end of the second semester of my second year of the program, and I was preparing to like defend my thesis. And um, I decided to take this divinity class, reading the Bible as literature, kind of on a whim. I mean, I've always really been interested in I the stories of the Bible, the stories of Genesis specifically, and really like what fascinated me, what still fascinates me, is that I know there are so many like apocryphal texts that were written contemporaneously with all the texts of the Bible that we consider the canon of the Bible. And these texts were considered just as sacred as the biblical text, when they were written thousands of years ago. But there was a time when a group of men sat down and said, okay, this one in, this one out, this one in, this one out. And they codified the text that we treat now as this holy text. And a lot of those other texts were burned or buried or hidden away and have, only recently been discovered, some of them in the last like 50 years. And it was that I have an editing background. I used to work at HarperCollins in the editorial department. And so I'm so fascinated with not just how a text gets written by an author, but how a team of people decide to build it into something that becomes the book you hold in your hands, right? That collaboration and the decision of like, this part's not really working, and what's going on with the character over here, like the collaboration of the editorial process is, um, it's something that obsesses me. And so realizing in this course that I was taking that like that also happened to the Bible, that like there's like deleted scenes from the Bible. I was super fascinated by that and just started to study like, well, where else can I find? I have this one reference that my professor has teased to me is perhaps the reason the angels fell from heaven. What else can I find? What else can I dig up? So I looked through all these apocryphal texts across, written across a thousand years of, probably like 500 BC to 500 AD, and found just these glorious and strange imaginings of angels. And it began to populate a world, not just of Luce and Daniel. I always knew that that love story was going to be epic and sweeping and all of that, but like it needed a whole cosmology. So doing some of the research and finding all these different kinds of angels, and all of them are morally gray, right? It's not like they're so powerful that it's not like they're ever just benevolent. So that was a really exciting thing to build in from the beginning of the series, that the auxiliary characters, Cam is one of my favorite characters in the series, but I also love
Same.
all of Luce's friends, like, and all of Luce's enemies, Molly and Gabby is like an oppositional force to her. And Arian is one of her dearest friends. Building all those characters out of like the real backbone of these angelology texts began to make me feel like, okay, I've got something here that I think can sustain a series.
Well, and that was one of my favorite parts of the original series is, she gets to this school and you're like, okay, it's paranormal. We're gonna be at the school, that's fine. But as the series goes on, it expands and it expands. At that point when I read it, like it expanded beyond anything that I had ever engaged with before, which I really, really enjoyed. Um, and yeah, that moral grayness, there was the pair of teachers that were like
Mm.
one was an angel and one was fallen.
Yeah.
And I always had to like go back and try to remember because there were times when it was such a gray area. And not just with them, with a lot of the characters. Um, because yeah, it was so murky. Even for them sometimes it was like the lines were so blurred. And I again, engaging with this as a teenager, like I really enjoyed exploring that idea of it's not always clear, it's not always easy either. Um, but going back, so obviously you studied before even like the birth of this universe, you studied this a lot. How much of like apocryphal texts ended up kind of being referenced or brought into? Were there events that you brought in or specific things that only exist in apocryphal texts but not in the Bible that were
Mm.
like incorporated into, I guess, the mythos?
Yeah, I think, I mean, so much of it, obviously there are elements from Genesis, there are elements from Revelation, sort of, or suggestions that we might get towards Revelation. Were certain actions not taken in the series. But so many of the details, so many of what, the entire, like the clan of the Gregories, the Watchers, everything about Daniel's sort of, at first Luce thinks it's his ancestors, but really it's his own past experiences and knowing her and loving her, as different versions of himself through time. All of that is apocryphal. And then the tasks and abilities of the different angels, the breakdowns of the angels, I think the Nephilim, that's apocryphal. No, I mean the Nephilim are biblical, but the Miss Sophia's clan of the sort of evil scholars. This is an apocryphal idea. Yeah, there's just so much richness. And White Lights, too, has tons of apocryphal stuff. I mean, the idea, also within the Fallen series, this character of Lilith, who is Cam's love, um, is many people know that Lilith is considered perhaps Adam's first wife. And she's a feminist icon because she like didn't want to do everything that Adam told her to do. And Adam like went to God about it and kind of got Lilith given the boot out of Eden. And in comes Eve, who perfects the partnership role that maybe Lilith didn't want to, couldn't do. Lilith goes on to become like this infamous demon queen, enchantress that has like immense powers and exciting powers. But yeah, this both Fallen and White Lights even more so, reckon with the true origins of our kind of theological world, starting with the Garden of Eden. White Lights really circles the Garden of Eden a lot.
Yeah, I love that you're doing that in the like the context of an adult romantasy novel. You know, I a lot of shit gets rained down on romance in general, which is very frustrating, but then any kind of fantasy that gets like coded as feminine.
Yeah.
So, I mean, thank you for still doing this, still, putting this kind of work out.
Yeah.
What was then the decision to, because of course the original series is YA, you know, for the most part PG, maybe
Mm.
PG-13, depending on,
Right.
what was the decision then to make this adult?
Yeah. Again, I don't know if it was. I first want to go back to what you said just a second ago about like the a feminist take on a romance that has like a historical or theological backbone. I just think like there's so much to contend with here, and really like for me, the source of power, autonomy, voice and sovereignty, it comes from the deep and distant past, pre-Christian, pre-Hebrew, pre-biblical. It's well before that that there is all this really exciting feminist power that kind of I think haunts a lot of our older texts and the way we live now. We know that there's something big and wondrous to uncover. And it's this like sort of collective work of all women, all feminists, um, to dig it up and bring it to the light. So that is really important to me. Um, as for switching to adults, you know, I the first adult novel that I wrote, it's called The Orphan Song. It's a historical fiction novel. And I wrote it when after my daughter was born, and I going through motherhood, um, becoming a parent made me want to write about that experience. And it wasn't something I like planned on or expected to do, but it was just that's what I wanted to write about. And then I kind of entered the adult world and wrote three contemporary rom-coms that are also all have a fantastical element to them too, a speculative element. But I think I've just been in the adult world for a little bit. I've always wanted to be in both, so I'm happy to be here. Um, in the case of White Lights, I was excited about the spice that I was reading in books. I think when I wrote Fallen, it's not to say that spicy adult fantasy did not exist, but I don't think it was getting as much attention, certainly as it is today. I wasn't finding it myself. I was finding young adult fantasy. Um, and I think that a big part of what's occurred, in the past 15, 20 years is simply that like the readership has grown up. And the readers who were voracious at 11, 12, 13 for all of these incredible young adult stories and fantasies and paranormal that were coming out, is just ready for more. And part of that more is the spice and the sex element, which is awesome. And part of that more is just like I think more outward looking stories. There's something really gloriously solipsistic and narcissistic about young adult fiction. Like the protagonist is necessarily looking at themselves. Like the big questions of young adult fiction are like, what is to become of me? What does my future hold? And that can hold enough tension for an entire book or series, right? Um, Adult characters are less future obsessed. It's less like a magic 8 ball that you're just like shaking it again. Like, I need to know, like, what's it going to be? You know what it's going to be. What you don't know is what is my role in it? How do I get to give back? What do I want the world to look like? What steps can I take to make it so? How should we treat each other? Um, so I think like moving into those kinds of existential questions, um, that's what I want to be writing about right now. And I love that the readership is like I'm meeting them where they're at. I think that's what feels so glorious about this moment, where there's this excess of incredible material being published and an excess of readership that's hungry for it. So I think it's like a happy synchronicity.
Yeah, as you know, I've been reading this. I'm part of that group of people that are like transitioned into adulthood liking this. And I do think when I think about the more adult geared novels with some fantasy elements from when I was younger, it definitely feels more like it was in genre where it's like, yeah, it is a detective novel with
Mm.
fantasy elements. And like maybe there's romance because there's always a little bit of sex in a detective
Mhm.
novel. Um, Whereas now, yeah, this romantasy genre feels very much like, I guess not even the child of, but like the same kind of group,
Yeah,
same
like the adult
essence
of.
of, yeah, yeah. Um, so I like, I mean, I would have read this even if it was YA, if I'm being honest. Um, because I love returning to those series that, or those universes even that I enjoyed as a kid. Um, but yeah, I like, I guess the thought given the weight that you're giving to, yeah, we've grown up.
Yeah. And it's a
Was
beautiful thing.
was Fallen written before or after you became a mother?
Before, well before.
Okay.
I wrote Fallen when I think I started it when I was 26. I was really young. Um, and I I guess I didn't yet know what my life was going to look like. I think I had maybe just met the man that I was going to marry, but I didn't know where I was going to live. I didn't know what career I didn't know that, I had been trying to be a writer for years at that point and failing. So I had no sense that anything was going to work out, I guess, in the way that I wanted it to. And so I think that is reflected in Lucinda's kind of she wants to know so badly. She wants everything to be revealed to her, and she has to fight so hard to get the answers that she wants.
Yeah, it's funny because she feels lost at first, but then as it goes, you're like, oh no, she like you do feel that essence of she knew kind of that she was looking for something and this is it. This is what she was looking for. And she didn't know that, but okay, sorry, I won't get I want to kind of shift a little bit into because I will just keep talking about Fallen.
But I love what
Um,
you just said. I think that captures it exactly.
thank you,
Like
thank
it's
you.
like this sense of I'll know what it is when I find it, and until then, I'm
Yes.
not going to stop looking.
Yes. Um, I want to shift a little bit then into like your writing habits and style and everything. Um, how did you feel that shift, or have you noticed a distinct shift aside from gearing more towards like I guess adult genre since becoming a mother, and how is that reflected in?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a constant state of evolution. I think the hardest I'm speaking only about being a writer here, a writer and a mother. Like the hardest thing about being a writer who becomes a mother is that before I had my kids, I was really able, and this is a kind of luxury, I was really able to disappear into a first draft for months at a time and not come up for air and not see friends and not talk on the phone and not consume any narrative like TV show or a book or whatever that wasn't entirely designed to like feed the story that I was trying to write. And it a lot of times like it's not a comfortable thing that I experienced right in my drafts before I had kids. A lot of times felt like drowning, like I just was
Mhm.
down there for so long, not in my own world, but in this fantastical world of the story. Um, but it also it certainly made it easier to produce a draft more quickly. And so having kids, my kids are older now. They're 13 and almost 12. So I have and they're away at school all day. So during the day, I'm able to work. I'm not like they're not babies. I sleep at night. I can work all day. But the second that I leave work, go pick them up at school or spend time with them in the afternoon, I am no longer thinking about my book. And whereas before I would be thinking about my book at dinner time and in the shower and in, all 24 hours a day and even in my dreams, right? And now it's really bifurcated. Like sometimes I think about it, late at night, but really like there's a time and place that I can devote myself to the story and then I shut it off. And I didn't know how to shut it off for many years. And so I just felt like I was never quite here and never quite there. I guess I've learned just with practice that like it's not, I wish it was a switch, but I can do it better now. I can get in and out. And I guess I don't have as much fear now that when I leave the world, I won't be able to come back to it tomorrow.
Mm.
Um, but that really was a shift because I think there's something so immersive about the experience of coming up with a first draft that it it makes you hesitant or even loath to like disrupt the you have to work really hard to get down there with the
Mhm.
characters. You don't want to leave them, but you have to because you have
Yeah.
to make dinner.
I was gonna say it's almost healthier. Like it
Yeah.
very much, and on TV it's always they're studying too long and too hard and they oversleep, but because they oversleep for the test the day of, it's like, oh, they got
Yes,
enough rest and they pulled
that's right.
away and
That's right.
oh, they stop thinking about it and they're in the shower and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, the second I stop thinking about it, the solution comes. Um,
Thank you. That's really great. That's very reassuring to me.
yeah. Well, I also think so, like something that when I'm, in conversation with authors that comes up is kind of like where's that spark of inspiration coming from? And I think writers and artists and creators in general, they kind of have this language for mine is usually like the muse. The muse shines down on me and like I can black out for a little while and just like write, whether it's an essay when I was in school or whatever. Um, and it seems like a much healthier relationship with that to be able to like disconnect from it when you need to. Is that like you've talked about it coming in dreams?
Mm.
How is the creativity? What's that spark coming from for you?
Yeah, it comes from so many places. I think one of the things that I've learned is just to welcome it from any avenue, no matter if it's familiar or feels really bizarre. Like it can come from a song on the radio. It can come from eavesdropping on a couple who's breaking up at a restaurant in the booth behind me. It can come from reading a book. Many times it does. It can come from dreams. It can come from a conversation with my daughter. It can, um, so I try to say yes to it wherever it finds me. Um, and I like most of the time get only a fraction of an idea at a time. So I'll get an idea, like I'll wake up from the dream that says, "What happens if heaven's running out of angels?" Okay, interesting. But who would tell that story and what would their stakes in it be and why? And I have no idea. So like that fraction of an idea just sits there, or it's like a note in my phone, or it's something I jot down in like a journal that I never pick up again and forget about, but it's still there, right? It's like it's somewhere marinating in my subconscious. And then, like in the case of White Lights, had that question in my mind, didn't know what to do with it. And in the meantime, a year, I don't know, later, my closest friend, who's been my best friend since I was 3 years old, she called me and told me a story about herself that I knew, but she hadn't given me the details of it really because she hadn't been able to. She had a near-death experience, and I knew that she had almost died. Um, I hadn't been, we lived across the country from each other, and by the time I heard about it, she was okay again. But I knew the medical terms for the things that had happened to her. I didn't know, and she couldn't tell me for 10 years her own experience. Um, because she hadn't integrated it yet, because she didn't have the language for it, because it was too immense and
Mhm.
too disruptive, right? Existentially. So finally, when she's able to tell me about it and tell me the things that she experienced and the things that she saw and felt, I became so obsessed and fascinated with NDEs, with near-death experiences. And I started to just read tons and tons about them and really got interested in the idea of the life review, which is that experience that we have, this magical thing our brains do. Not everybody who has a near-death experience has it, but it's when your life flashes before your eyes and you see scenes and people and images and memories. Um, and I'm sure I'm romanticizing it. I don't know, I think it happens very differently for everybody, but I love the idea that it, in who knows, 60 seconds or whatever, makes sense of your entire life and gives you a feeling of closure that prepares you to go on wherever we're going on to, right? And I just took so much solace and also intrigue in this idea. Like, I started to think, what if it wasn't our magical brains that did this? What if it was a team of filmmakers, like very specialized filmmakers? Um, and what if they were angels? And what if this all falls under the role of what the angel of death does? And so this became another fraction of an idea that I started to think, okay, if I put this idea of angels crafting life reviews for mortals, with the idea that all these angels are quitting and heaven's running out, then I think I have a story. All that's left to do now is find the heroine who wants to tell it.
Well, I like that your technique seems to be like planting, and then
Yeah.
as things come together, you're like, actually, these all go
Yes.
together. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I want to ask also because you mentioned, of course, getting inspiration from things you read, and I realize you're very in the industry, so this is probably a very big question. What are some books then that you feel, I mean, again, it feels big because it's like, yeah, everything we read influences everything we're doing, like everything we're engaging in, whether we think it is or not. But can you pinpoint specific books or authors that you feel helped bring this story to life and also you back into this world?
Yeah. I mean, one of my original absolute favorite series, it's old, and I was made to feel embarrassed about it when I was a little bit older for how much I liked it. And maybe a lot of times people are made to feel embarrassed for the series that they're obsessed with. But I loved this series called The Clan of the Cave Bear, by Jean ML. It's about the dawn of humanity, and it's about like the first woman, and the clan of like not quite humans that she lives among. Um, and it's really brilliant. I read it. The first book is very sweeping and historical. The second books onward get incredibly spicy, like out of nowhere. And I read them when I was really young. And so I did used to have to like hide them because my mom would be like, "You checked that out of the library again?" And I'm like stuffing it under my pillow or something. Um, but I loved those so much. I really do think that like the books you read when you're 11, 12, 13 that light you up, they like live with you forever. And I actually went back this summer and reread the first Clan of the Cave Bear book. And it totally holds up. And it was even better than I remembered it being. It was just incredible. So that's like one of my earliest influences. A book that is newer, not so new, but that I hold up as just this like exemplary model for what fiction can do and what like a woman's story can be is Circe by Madeline Miller. Um,
One
it's
of my favorites.
it's it's just so breathtaking, and I won't I no spoilers, even though the book came out a while ago, but I won't say what happens at the end, but the way the ending was so like inevitable and also so shocking, and how it seemed to some, it's like I think the one of the other reasons why I love paranormal fiction is because we're able to make we're able to make fantastical creatures feel so human, like they are so beyond us, and yet to render them where they feel the same things that we do and yearn for the same things that we do and regret the same things that we do and all of that. I thought that what Madeline Miller did with Cersei at the end, like to make to make her feel just like me, this
Hmm.
goddess, that was really, really cool. So yeah, those are two books that I have been like wholly inspired by. But I'm sure like everybody who's in this game and in the writing world and in the publishing world or loves these books. We read voraciously. So books that I've recently been obsessed with, I think V.E. Schwab's "Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil" I thought was like just beautiful and so inventive and like I would love to live inside that book. Um, I love Catherine M. Valente, the fantasy writer. I love Alex E. Harrow. I
Same.
thought, yeah, just beautiful writing. Kristen Ciccarelli, Chloe Gong. Yeah, I'm always looking for the next person I can love too.
Nice, nice. I mean, I'll jump ahead. This is a question I usually ask at the end, but I feel like we're there like before we continue on. If you could only recommend one book, and again, this is a hard question since you're like, first of all, how many books are you reading regularly?
Probably four at once.
You gotta touch all the moods, all the flavors.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if you could only recommend one book for the rest of your life, what book would it be?
Oh my gosh. Um, and oh, I have to. Okay, it would be Cersei.
Nice. Okay.
Every time I recommend that book to someone, I feel like I've done humanity a service.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Okay. I want to shift gears again, then back to White Lights. Luce and Daniel are a very distinct kind of classic falling for each other hard, resisting it, falling back together, going harder. How was it different than creating Des and Rafe? Uh, and where did that start? And I guess you can talk about them individually. It doesn't have to be kind of their romance, but where was the acorn for them?
Yeah, Rafe changed a lot as I was writing this book because honestly, I started this knowing that when Des leaves her life to go to the film school, Acheron, she's leaving behind this what if question with a man who she hasn't yet gotten to see if she loves, but she thinks she probably would. Um, and then she jumps into this world that turns her life upside down. Um, and so there's the character of Asher is the guy that she's left behind that she's really kind of trying to get back to in a
Mhm.
way for much of the book, and trying to see what that is. Um, in a way, I guess he represented like the Daniel, this kind of like, this is it, this is the one feeling, but I can't have him, I can't be with him, I can't get to him. Um, and so that left a lot of room for Rafe, who is Dez's mentor in at Acheron. Um, it left a lot of room for him to be like the right kind of chaos. And
Mhm.
he's really drives her crazy and she can't stand him a lot of the time. And he is incredibly talented at something she wants to get better at. And he's also driving her up the wall. So that dynamic is delicious to me. Like I do love an enemies to romance to lovers. And the the sexual chemistry between them felt like very fun to play with. And then there's also this because of the mythology, there are restrictions on what they can and cannot do. That, any kind of boundaries you can put on sexuality are very delicious. So she's existing in this super hedonistic world all of a sudden, where the angels are. She doesn't know they're angels, but the angels are kind of off the chain sexual beings, but she can't quite get what she wants and needs for much of the series, really. She has to build toward being able to withstand it. So yeah, all of those dynamics were really fun. Rafe's character, once I realized he's the bad boy, he kind of leapt off the page.
It did kind of feel like justice for Cam, I'm gonna be honest.
That's it.
The other side of the love triangle.
Yeah.
Um, so I kind of want to jump into the, I guess we don't have to get too much into it, but like you mentioned the hedonism of the angels. Is that something you're pulling from the apocryphal text? Is that just like an expansion of those lines from Genesis?
Yeah, it is in the apocryphal text. It's actually, there's also some stuff in Paradise Lost about just for lack of a better word, like the abject horniness of angels, and specifically their yearning for humanity. Um, and yeah, I mean, I wanted to play with this idea that love, romantic love, is not something that is allowed to angels. It's not something that is really like on the menu for their existences, just by nature of like what they're supposed to be doing, what their purpose is in the universe. Um, they're not, like us, we're drawn to people and then we're supposed to have families and all of that with them, and angels don't have that role. So there is much sex, but an absence of emotional connection. And this is something that the angels both celebrate and sort of privately, it's devastating to them. What they would love to be able to try love, but don't know how, can't pull it off. And that's part of the reason why some of them are leaving the fold, to give it a shot in the mortal world. So yeah, like when Des steps in, there's so much that she doesn't understand about the way people are behaving. It's exciting and titillating and scary and all of that. Um, but she has something to teach them too.
Yeah, and I like that they are kind of dealing with similar fears, which is this like, am I worthy
Mm,
of the things that like are possible? Um, that's kind of almost point blank, like the question she asks herself at first when
yeah,
she's trying to decide if she's going to go to Acheron. Um, and it's Mo, the person, her brother, the person she loves most in the world, and his what she thinks he's going to say that helps push her to do that. So yeah,
yeah,
I love that. And kind of, I guess, going back to, all of the myth, the like our mythology, not the books, but like our biblical apocryphal and then like pre-Christian, pre-Hebrew, um, all of these stories when we have uh I guess it's almost all through mythos. It's like there is this desire for something that humans have,
yeah,
which is, I guess, to some degree, sorry, I am slight tangent. Like to some degree is narcissistic in like these stories are told by humans and we're putting ourselves on some sort of pedestal you could argue
yeah,
against what's supposed to be divine and
yeah.
but what if it's not that like bad? What if it's like
Mhm.
romantic and sweet and nice and you learn from each other?
Yeah, I love that so much. I actually went yesterday. Um, I went downtown to I was going to see to a butterfly pavilion where you can stand in this room and like there's 1,000 butterflies and they'll fly and land on you. And I was using it as for research for actually the sequel to White Lights. Um, and uh, Getting to that part of the museum, I was in the Natural History Museum in LA, and I walked through the like just the dinosaur reconstructions, the really giant brontosauruses and all that. And I've seen a brontosaurus, bones many times in my life, but something about it yesterday, I was just looking at them and thinking of some of the questions that you're asking, like it might have to do with seeing Project Hail Mary recently and like
Yeah.
just thinking about how aliens maybe like, does it have to be such a negative experience where they want to kill us? Might it be that we're trying to connect, bridge whatever divide there is? And I was just thinking about like the humanity, again, like the narcissism of that, of dinosaurs and like just how they're in a way like their hands look like ours. And I know, I don't know all the like science of the size of their brains or what we think they were capable of thinking of, but just like this really sort of regal monster. Um, I think I was just putting it into perspective of like the worlds that I'm creating and the monsters that abide within those worlds. But yeah, that like I'm always going to be looking for the characters who are trying to bridge a divide with peace and love. You know, if that there's going to be war and chaos too, but I love the idea that there is something unique and powerful and very special about the fact that we die, about the
Mhm.
fact that we're fragile, about the fact that we get these brief 50, 60, 90, 100 years in this place to do whatever we can do. And the romance of that ending. And that's, all of that is embedded in this book.
Mhm.
But I think it's also it shows up in any story you read about humans reckoning with non-human powers.
Yeah, I find it interesting that there is a lot of media, books, TV, movies where that other is like famously antagonistic.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I do enjoy about romantasy and paranormal romance. Because, like, of course, we've got, if you look at I think right now the big thing, of course, is fairy world beings, and there's always a level of like, I guess, xenophobia
Hmm.
involved,
Hmm.
but also the genre of romantasy implies that this other is not inherently bad. They are actually just like kind of negative in the same way that humans are negative, which is to
Yeah.
say, like, if it's bad, it's just because of them as an individual and less about what they are.
Right.
Um,
That's great. Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, I want to explore like the mythos a little bit more, of course, but like also I don't want to like I could continue. I don't want to get too far into it. Um, I guess the last thing I'll ask is what can you say about the rest of the series? I guess without spoiling too much, of course, but
Yeah, I will try not to spoil. I'm in the second draft of the second book. Um, and we were talking about the way the cosmology expands in Fallen and this kind of almost like a dare to like what we're space is going to get bigger, but like can time get bigger too? Can love get bigger? Like what else can we push to like its limit with each book? So I that is my goal with White Lights. And in the second book, the white lights, so the white lights are the angels that work under the guise of the angel, under the umbrella of the missing angel of death. They work on the life reviews. Um, so in the second book, they still are contending with all the same crises of the first book, but now they are also facing a new sect of angels, the angels of life, which opens up a whole nother realm, a whole new set of existential conflicts, and puts Des into even more dire situation than she'd been in the first book. I can see when I think of the third book, I see a color. Like I know the physical location where I want this third book to end. Um, but I'm trying to write to figure out how. everybody gets there and how to deepen and expand all of these aspects further and kind of just like blow things out exponentially to arrive at the place where it feels like that Cersei ending, like shocking and inevitable. It could only be just like this. And how did it get to be just like this?
Awesome. Thank you. Um, I'm very much looking forward to these next two books. Where can listeners and watchers find more about you?
Yeah, I'm easy to find on social media. My handle's Lauren Kate Books. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, TikTok. My website is laurenkatebooks.net. And yeah, I'll be on the road for White Light soon. So you can check out my tour stops too and come meet me in person. That'd be even better.
Yeah. Um, at the time of release, the book is now on shelves. So go to your local bookstore or request it at your library. Get the book.
Yay.
But thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you to everybody for listening. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Melissa. This was wonderful.
Of course, thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me for another episode of In Bed with Books, a bookish podcast for bookish babes. Make sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of the latest updates. And if you have any suggestions for authors, books, or topics that you want to hear about on the podcast, then feel free to DM me on Instagram or shoot me an email. I'm wishing you a lovely rest of your day, and until next time, happy reading.